Snip, tuck, tuck, fold. Crease, tuck, tape.
It's not that complicated, Dad.
Wrap, crease, tape, twist, tape.
Ohio Lottery scratch offs make great holiday gifts. And play Holiday Bonus Millions with a 200 times multiplier and a $2 million top prize.
Fold, crinkle, crinkle, roll.
Plus, you can enter non-winning tickets in My Lotto Rewards for a second chance to win up to 1,000 times the price of your ticket.
Please crinkle, gate, fold, ring, curl, scrunch.
The best part, Dad? No wrapping required.
No tuck, tuck, fold?
No tuck, tuck, fold.
Give the gift of fun. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 252. Today's episode is all about drinking yourself to your own personal hell.
For me, just being open and honest and transparent and having the conversations to demystify alcohol and also portray it as what it really is, which is not a good character in anybody's story. You know, there's nobody that has looked back on their life and thought, oh, wow, that bender in New Orleans, what a moment. You know, that's my highlight.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
If this is your first time giving your mind a little love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Mind love is a habit, and the more you give your mind that love and intention, the better you'll feel about yourself and your life. Plus, it's really a win-win because more subscribers means Mind Love attracts even more amazing guests to bring you their wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. Today, I'm excited to share a review from CaliGirl123 who says, "Just incredible. She's amazing. She has lifted my spirits and makes my daily struggle not a struggle. She gives me hope and always makes me feel empowered and ready to take on my day." Thank you so much. I'm sending you so much love. I think we all feel that way sometimes. And sometimes just a little message of hope makes those struggles seem not so bad, or at least gives us a new perspective. So thank you so much for taking the time to write this. Do you ever question your relationship with alcohol? Do you ever wonder if it's really worth it? Or why you're even doing it? I did for years and years. But if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd give up drinking in my 30s, I would have told you that you were crazy. I remember actually thinking that I felt sorry for people who got older and stopped partying. That would never happen to me, I told myself. I'd be the fun mom that you see on TV with a large glass of wine while the kids played outside. If I even had kids, because who has time for that when there's so much fun to be had? What an aspiration, right? Oh, Clementine. She's my fucked up alter ego who ran the show for way too long. May she rest in peace. I finally came to my senses and broke up with alcohol a little over a year ago, and it has been one of the best decisions of my life. Right up there with actually keeping down my food instead of binging and purging, or getting off Adderall, or cutting out toxic people. Clementine would be pissed if she were listening to this. It's like all her favorite pastimes are gone. There was just something about alcohol that had this extra special hold over me, and that hold looked different over time. Maybe it's because it was so socially acceptable. In my 20s, the problems were obvious, which is so ironic because that is when I was the most blind to them. There was the time I was sexually assaulted while blacked out, or even fully unconscious on 2 occasions that I know of, and only one of those do I somehow internalize as an actual sexual assault. For some reason, the longer I lived that lifestyle, the more acceptable waking up naked with a stranger seemed. Like, could I really be sure that I didn't agree before I passed out? I think I remember choosing sleep. Or the time I fell and needed stitches and woke up in the hospital. Or the other time I woke up in the hospital, which I still swear that I was drugged because I only remember my first drink given to me by a stranger. And of course I said yes because free booze. And then here I am in the drunk tank hall of the hospital with an IV in my arm. Or the stupid arguments I got in with people I was dating. Or the people who decided not to date me due to witnessing my drinking habits. Or the food I binged when I was too drunk to care. Or the fingernails I bit or peeled down until they were bleeding because my addictive tendencies would fire up when my impulse control went down. Or the criminal I accidentally dated because he supplied my addictions. I could, quite sadly, go on for hours. But in my 30s, I had made so much progress compared to the decade before. I was actively moderating, again, comparatively. I didn't get drunk anymore. I didn't party. I didn't really make bad decisions or suffer any injuries anymore. That's a plus. But the thing is, alcohol still affected me negatively. It still took up too much brain space. For me, moderating in general took up too much brain space. Of course, I wanted a third glass of wine. When I was healing my bulimia and my relationship with food, I knew that I couldn't keep trigger foods around the house because it was a slippery slope. So why would I think that it would be easy to just have a little wine and expect that my old neural pathways wouldn't take over? So yeah, I did make a lot of positive progress over the years, but it still put a cloud over my life. I still related wine to being the center of fun, supposedly. It still numbed areas of my life. And I know some people have a totally different relationship with alcohol, and I'm not speaking for them. This was just my journey. But if my whole goal in this lifetime is to be as aware and at peace as possible, then this choice really made no sense anymore. And I started to wonder, who would I be without alcohol? Would I be happier? Would I actually finish some of the things on my someday list? Would I engage with the world around me more? Would I explore fun hobbies? Be focused on the moment instead of the drink? And so if you find yourself questioning your relationship with alcohol, or even just wondering what life or you would be like without it, this episode is for you. And what I love about this one is that it's more of a deep and honest conversation than just an interview. We're talking to Jason Carter. He is a husband, father, and entrepreneur who struggled for decades with depression and heavy drinking before beginning the journey to recovery. And in his new memoir, To Hell I Ride, When a Life Examined Became Worth Living, he takes an unflinching look into the darkest corners of his past and how he found clarity and ultimately redemption. So 3 key things we will discuss are the slippery slope from alcohol to chronic depression, how to recognize the right time for change, and how to support your own recovery with fun and humor, even in the midst of a mental health crisis. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777. And now let's welcome Jason Carter to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored. I've been listening to episodes of the show and really get a lot out of it. And, to be a guest is really a privilege and an honor. And I hope to serve you and your listeners with something of value today.
Well, give us a little synopsis of your story so I can slowly peel away the layers until you don't want to talk about it anymore.
Well, I wrote a book recently. It came out about 6 months ago, and it's a memoir of sorts. And the long and the short of it is I was, at the time, 44 and really contemplating things like suicide, kind of like a daily fantasy, not that I was ever really serious about doing it, but I'm sure that's what we all say. But I just had come to this point where life became too exhausting. And I booked a emergency appointment with a psychiatrist, and we were kind of going over it. And then I started telling her how much I drank on a daily basis. And, she turned ghost white and kind of identified that as the problem. And I had always known that, but I had concealed it very well. Well, I guess not very well. Most people knew that I was a very heavy drinker, but I think I was concealing the pain that it was causing me. And I went up to Telluride, Colorado on a ski trip with my family. And this was about a week after I was told, you really got to stop drinking, something I'd always known. And I was very scared and but realistic and kind of thinking, maybe if I just cut back a little. And I was actually walking to a wine bar after a day of skiing by myself to get a glass of wine. And I just started feeling this really big knot in my chest. And I just kept walking past the wine bar and just kind of got literally lost. I don't know if you've been to Telluride, but it's tucked in between two mountains. And, you go to one side of the town and it's the end, and you got to turn around. And I really don't remember doing that. And I kind of snapped out of it. And I was hearing this voice, and it was just a very soothing, comforting voice. It seemed familiar, and it just kept repeating the words, "You don't have to do this anymore. You don't have to do this anymore." And as I was thinking about these words against what I was wanting to do and knowing the path that would take me down, I really just kind of started, crying. And I sat down. There was, there happened to be a bench right where I was. And I'm sitting there and I just have this weight lifted off my shoulders. And I had never felt so alive and light. And I knew right then and there that I just would never have a drink again. And I just was speechless and kind of crying, and finally got up and walked away. And then I kind of turned around just to look at the bench, and I wanted to get a snapshot of this place. And I don't know what the zoning laws are in Telluride, but in the middle of this neighborhood, one of the houses had been converted into a First Presbyterian Church of Telluride. And that was just kind of the, punch in the face, so to speak, where I knew without a doubt in my heart that God was talking to me and just basically saying, I'm going to take this away from you. You don't have to do this anymore. And it was said in such a way that made so much sense. And, that was almost 7 years ago. And under any circumstance, whether it's traveling alone on business or a weekend with the boys, I can't imagine myself ever having another drink again. And after about a year, I decided I really had a hard time telling a story. I wasn't telling it because I don't see myself as somebody that's going to go around and go, listen to my miracle. So I wrote a book about it. And, the book kind of covers my life in a kind of ghost of Christmas past, because I was trying to understand, how did alcohol become the king of me, because, by most measures, I'm a pretty good dude. I was an athlete, pretty good grades, went to college, married, job, the real normal kind of life. But alcohol became the main character who I was serving. And it just got to the point where that was exhausting me, to the point where I wanted to end my life. And then a ski trip to Telluride changed it all. And so that's what the book's about. It leads up to that moment. And my hope was, I know I'm not that unique. So I know there's a lot of people out there similar to me that might be struggling with alcohol. And, maybe they're too hard on themselves. And I just went back and looked at the game tape of my life to understand it, not flog myself, and why did I do that? But really to understand it. And to me, it's like a blueprint. If anybody wants to do a deep dive of self-evaluation, it's a template of sorts. And then, maybe they can come to their own conclusions. That's not the specific ask of any reader. It's really written to be enjoyed as a story. And that's what the book is about. And, that's why I'm lucky to be on shows like this and talk about it.
So how much were you drinking at your peak? You know what's interesting about mindfulness? It's not just about being present in the moment. It's about being thoughtful about the future. We meditate, we exercise, we work on ourselves, all to create a better tomorrow, right? But there's one piece of the future planning puzzle that nobody likes to talk about. I get it. Life insurance feels heavy. But here's the thing. Just like meditation is an act of self-care, getting life insurance is an act of family care. It's about making sure your love continues to support your family, even when you're not there to do it yourself. That's why I want to tell you about SelectQuote. They're one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers. Their licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And here's what's cool. They actually reward you for taking care of yourself. If you're in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And it's way more affordable than you might think. You could even get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. We just did this all recently after putting it off for years, and I can't tell you the peace of mind just from getting it done. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/mindlove. Go to selectquote.com/mindlove today to get started. That's selectquote.com/mindlove. So how much were you drinking at your peak?
That's a great question. It varied. I had a full-time job, so there was definitely a flow to the week. I was never, I'm sure, how can you believe an alcoholic? But I wasn't drinking like at lunch and before work, but my week would, I'd go to work and do this and that. And then by, Monday or Tuesday, it was a couple glasses of wine with dinner. And Wednesday, it was a cocktail at the bar, and then 3 glasses of wine with dinner. By Thursday, 3 cocktails, 2 bottles of wine. It just kept building and building and building until, Saturday was just a disaster. And, Sunday was all about just, oh my God, I hate my life. And, you're just trying to get over that. And then by Monday afternoon, you're kind of looking out and going, oh, everything seems to be okay. So I'll just rinse and repeat. It was, the amounts matter, but there was such a tolerance that I had. So it was quite a bit, I was drinking for a specific reason, and it was to get, to a certain point where I did not feel any pain. And most importantly, that my inner voice is just a very, particularly cruel person, kind of like thinking in a good way. It reminds me of like the great Santini, if he was like Dennis Miller, just always second guessing me. And I was just trying to mute that out so I could go on with my life. And of course, once that voice was muted out, I was usually incapacitated and unable to really do anything, much less, things that are going to be positive and change my life.
Yeah, I feel you. I went through really big binge drinking phases. And then eventually I was trying to moderate, and I would in comparison. And I think that's what held me was I drank at the end of my drinking. I was drinking so much less than I was before, but it was still like 2 to 3 glasses a night, and it was still affecting my mental health. And it started to feel like this cycle where I would be waiting for wine o'clock, and then I'd and then you'd think like, oh, I'll have a glass of wine while I do yoga, or I'll stretch, or make dinner. But then it ends up being just like wanting to sit and drink the glass of wine and maybe watching too much TV. And it was just like the whole last half of my day, the last few hours of my day were just a waste. And I remember feeling hopeless. Like, this is just a cycle that is going to keep going for my whole life.
Yeah, we called it the whiskey horizon. And, it would, like, for instance, if it's, 3 o'clock on a Wednesday and you're in a meeting and you're just, still a little hungover from the night before, and you're just as tired as you ever can imagine, and you want this thing to wrap up. And then you're, oh, wait, it's almost 5 o'clock. And you just get this giddy excitement, knowing that carrot is waiting for you, and you can plow through your day. And, I don't think that's good in any language or country, if that is your reward. Especially, I know a lot of people that are very responsible drinkers and they can have that champagne. And I just, my cellular structure just wasn't wired that way. I'm just kind of more of an extremist in a lot of things. And certainly, in drinking and the moderation thing, I tried that maybe 100 times and it never worked, because that's not what I wanted. I didn't want, the buzz of 2 beers. I wanted to drink 9 beers and then maybe get a shot of tequila. And then who knows, maybe a glass of wine, because there was a very specific reason why I was drinking the way I did.
So you said in your book that as you were driving from Texas to Telluride, you were searching for clarity. But in that mindset, still being in that vicious cycle of drinking, what were you hoping to get with the clarity? Was it just the open road and lots of time to think? What were you wishing for?
Yeah, so great question. And I had no idea. So that was 6 days after I met with a psychiatrist. And so I hadn't had a drink in 6 whopping days. What a hero. And I was just in I knew she was right. I certainly, my friends and my wife and various other people over the years were telling me, you probably should stop, or shaming me into thinking I should. But she was the first one that, I guess, a real medical doctor looked at me eye to eye and just kind of like I was an idiot, like, you really need to stop drinking. And so I just kept chewing on that. And, when you're on the road, especially in today's world with technology everywhere, every spare minute is filled with a scroll or, a text that you don't need to send or read. And it was just a kind of a good moment for me to really spin. And I guess looking back on it now, I think that I didn't know what I was looking for. And I just kept grinding over the events of my life to the point where I was exhausted from thinking and finally maybe just open to whatever the universe was going to suggest to me. And, years after the fact, I've read books about monks and whatnot, and how, even those guys have a hard time slowing the mind down enough to really hit enlightenment. And they're living in a cave and listening to bells all day. And so I think that was as close as I'll ever get to just having my mind just say, look, stop thinking, just, you're done, and go on a walk. And that's where, lo and behold, I finally heard, the answer, and probably that one that's been being yelled at me ever since I was like in 8th grade, but I was just finally ready to listen.
I feel like those of us who have the tendency to reach for something or to numb, we have the hardest time listening to that voice because we don't leave space for it. We're always filling the void with something. And I will say that I mentioned that I got to a point where I was moderating. Like, I was moderating by a lot of people's standards. What I couldn't moderate, or what I was having a harder time moderating, was having like one night a week where I would drink. I could do that, but it wasn't fun for me. It was like I was just waiting for that one night versus, right. But then I could have 1 glass of wine. I would prefer at least 2, but still, 2 glasses of wine. If you would have told me that in my 20s, I would have been like, no big deal. She doesn't have a problem.
Right.
But what I learned is I thought that if I got there to the 1 or 2 glasses of wine a day and taking a few nights off here and there, that would feel like a healthy moderation. What I didn't expect was that even just that amount, even just 1 night or 1 glass per night, I had this like dark cloud over everything. It was like I was less excited about life, and I wasn't able to see that until I gave it up for at least a couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I don't feel like I'm like chained to this thing anymore, if that makes sense.
No, I totally get that. And I believe there's a lot of good things about booze. And I don't go around, everybody should stop. But I think that certain people get to a point where they know it's not good for them. Even the 1 or 2 glasses, because that's all you're thinking about most of the day. And so I think this is a more of a Wayne Dyer thing. And I'm paraphrasing totally, but it's, the when the mind and your actions are not congruent, it just, like, I know drinking's bad. I believe it's bad for me. But here I am drinking. Even if it's 1 glass of wine, then you're eroding the ability to even trust yourself, because you're doing something that you've already admitted to yourself is not good for you or your future or your goals or whatever you're trying to manifest. And I think it just chips away. So it doesn't, certainly, I don't think it really matters if it's, 2 glasses or 2 bottles. If it's getting in your way, if it's taking all of your attention, then it's probably not good for you.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I move through my addictions, because I've had a lot of them in my life, is I have to like overwhelm myself with the negative information about it. So when I was first making the conscious choice, I didn't have like this enlightened moment where I never craved it again. I was like, I need to do this work. I need to bootstrap. And I started reading all the quit lit books, as they call them, like all the literature on quitting. And one of them was probably the most boring of them because it wasn't written in novel story like form, but it was by Dr. David Nutt. And he goes into all of the things about alcohol. It's just called Drink with a question mark on it. And ironically, this dude owns a wine bar, but he only drinks like a couple of times a year because he knows the information. And even drinking 1 glass a week increases your risk of like 9 different cancers. It's insane.
Yeah.
And so I am at the point where my personal belief is it's not good for anybody. And yeah, they can have a relationship that's much different than mine, but it's not good for them. And I don't think that I think that people think there's amazing things about booze, but I think in any case where something is a crutch, it needs to be a very temporary thing. Because I have a friend who always talks about how, alcohol is just great. Like there's something about the social aspect, and I see where she's coming from. I've had a lot of good times on alcohol, but it's ironic to me that this same person, it's been a couple years that we've been talking about this because it was a couple years that I was talking about giving up drinking. And she's like, I'm on the cusp of my relationship with alcohol, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, see, that's the thing. I find that the people who have the healthiest, I'm doing air quotes, relationship with alcohol don't make excuses for it or really proclaim the benefits. It just is. And the people that recognize the downfalls, you can kind of see they'll eventually at least try to give it up. And then there's the people that are like, no, but, and they're saying all the good things. And I'm like, those people I now believe will eventually get to the spot where they want to give it up, because otherwise, why would they be having all of this? Like, I don't do that with like strawberries, like.
Right. No, you've really touched on something. I get that a lot. And, I refer to alcohol as king alcohol and in a term of endearment because, we were raised, you seem like you're Gen X, like there's nothing wrong. I was crack. That's bad. That's the thing you can't do. But booze was like everywhere. It was portrayed in movies. Honestly, when I was in 2nd grade, living in Southern California, and we had cable, and it was called like On, and it was like a box the size of a Buick on top of your television, and Animal House came on, and that changed my life. I was literally just like, I'm going to join a fraternity. I don't care what I study in college, but that looks like, And so from that moment forward, I just thought, drinking and all that, that's just a part of life. It's a reward. It's what successful men do. And anytime now, I don't get in arguments or debates. I'm not interested in that. But it's very interesting talking to my kids because I'm just, I've got an eye on it, and I've talked to them openly. And one of the things I came to conclude with one of my sons, we were down at the coast, the Texas coast, not the California coast. There's a big difference. And the whole weekend, he and his buddies you could just tell they were like scheming, like, how are we going to get someone to buy us beer? Where are we going to hide the beer? When are we going to drink the beer? And on the way home, I just said, there's really no reason to grow up fast. Trust me, being a kid is great. And when you find yourself planning every aspect of your day around alcohol, it's something I want you to just recognize when that happens. I'm not saying it's a problem or not. I was in high school. That's all we ever did was like, how are we going to get a keg? And what field can we drink it in? And so I think that for me, just being open and honest and transparent and having the conversations to demystify alcohol and also portray it as what it really is, which is not a good character in anybody's story. There's nobody that has looked back on their life and thought, oh, wow, that bender in New Orleans, what a moment. That's my highlight. And, they're like, stained with hurricanes and whatnot. And what's interesting, you write the book, and I guess in today's day and age, that means you have to be an influencer and start saying pithy things on Instagram. And I don't feel very comfortable because I don't want to, I can't tell anybody else how to live their life. And, but I think what I've come to the point is like, if you just kind of turn the focus in on the ones that you know and really love and care about and have meaningful conversations, not only about alcohol, but everything, that's where, for me, that's where I've gained the most, at least in my personal life. I haven't given a TED talk or anything. And sometimes I think about that, but I just want people in my book, you mentioned Quit Lit. I read a lot of stuff and before I wrote my own book, and where I was trying to separate it from that was, I'm not going to look back on my life with shame, but more curiosity. And also, I'm not going to flog myself because what's the point? I mean, it happened and I didn't do anything, truly awful. And I think that if people can just start going back and looking at some of the other moments in their life where alcohol has brought, shame or pain and not just keep brushing it under the rug, they might be able to make some sense out of it and move forward, if they're even concerned about that.
We're all searching for something better in life, right? Better habits, better mindset, better relationships. But when it comes to hiring, searching isn't always the best approach. Instead of searching, why not match? That's where Indeed comes in. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. It's your go-to matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors. Their matching engine helps you find quality candidates fast. And I mean really fast. Did you know that in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed worldwide? That's what I love about Indeed. It's like having a mindful hiring assistant. Instead of getting overwhelmed by endless resumes, you can schedule, screen, and message candidates all in one place. The platform actually learns your preferences, so the more you use it, the better it gets at finding people who align with your vision. And get this, 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. That's why more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide use Indeed to hire great talent fast. I just love that it keeps all of my hiring processes organized. I can do everything right there instead of having spreadsheets and notes and video call links. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. That is such a key part, is actually being honest about it. Because what's interesting to me is when I started that, I did a whole practice, like journaled, like, let me see where alcohol really did me wrong. And as I said, I had really decreased my intake by the end, like the last couple years, to where I was a healthier drinker than a lot of people that I knew. But my personal goals in life, it's self-awareness. How can I be as self-aware as I can be when I'm numbing parts of my day and reaching for this thing and I didn't even know why I was doing it anymore. I had done so much work on myself. Like, this wasn't my beginning of self-development. It was like the tail end. Yeah. I mean, well, I guess I'm still in the middle. Oh, and by the way, thank you for calling me a Gen Xer. I'm an elder millennial. I'm almost 40. So I'll just take that as a compliment and move on. But when I started journaling the things, all the things were actually... most of the things. There were still things like, I want to be present for my son. I don't want him to see this every single day and it be so normalized that that's just what is his default patterning. But the real bad things were like my 20s and even a couple of years, like maybe the first year of my 30s. Horrible things happened. I mean, that's when I was sexually assaulted, was drinking. I've blacked out places. I woke up in a bush. I've lost things that were $1,000 before. I've injured myself, all of these things that are if you were checking the boxes of, are you an alcoholic? And somehow in that stage of my life, I was like, nah, just going to moderate. I think I can do this. And then in my moderation of being like, okay, I can do this, but I still am not enjoying it. I don't like this relationship anymore. So it was that person. Maybe that was it. Maybe I had to get a clearer head to be fully honest with myself.
Yeah, and reframing king alcohol, if you thought of it as, I guess, a person, and you were, going over your pros and cons of your friends, and you'd have to look at that and go, wow, why am I friends with this guy? I mean, look at all of the things this guy does to me. Holy cow. He left me for freaking dead in a bush. And it's amazing to me. I live in Texas, and, you're in Southern California. There's a more healthier mindset out there by every measure. And I've kind of been like voted off the island in a way, because nobody wants to be around somebody that doesn't drink. Maybe it's because I'm boring. I don't think that, but it's either a reminder that they kind of know, like, oh my gosh, here I go again. I'm, opening my third bottle of wine, and my kids are nowhere to be seen. And there's stupid Jason over there. He just got done jogging. And so it's not a hostile environment, but it's really not welcoming. And, I've gotten over that. I've kind of reset it, and where, how could I blame them? Because everybody in my life that I met and either grew close with or am still close with, we all entered a social agreement, based on certain things and qualities. And I was always the big drinker. We're going out with Carter. All right. You could count on me, like the sunrise. And so once I stopped, I'm the one that I'm in breach of contract. So they have every right to fire me. And it's great, actually, because it just reminds me that God saved me in Telluride for something. I'm still looking for that, but it wasn't to try and harvest these relationships that really never were based on more than anything other than a synthetic liquid that we'd all meet and drink and have a great time. And so my default was, okay, just focus on your kids and your family. And that has been so rewarding. And, I think my oldest son was probably maybe in 7th grade when I stopped, just in time. He'd certainly seen me a few times, but, I saved him of an adolescence plagued with memories of dad. Why is his white shirt blood red and he's sleeping on the floor again? Saving him hundreds of thousands of dollars in therapy down the road. And the thing is, what I realized is, my kids, they're the ones that don't have that. We never entered that contract based on alcohol or this and that. It was, we entered this contract because I gave birth. My wife and I created you, and this is the thing that I need to give my very best to. And that's the thing about drinking. Even if it's 2 glasses of wine, scientifically, you're on a different playing field than your children. And so you might think you're giving your best, but you're just not. And at some point, people have that realization. And then when they continue doing what they're doing, even though they know it's wrong or they're not giving their best, I don't know anybody that could have that realization and not start kind of hating themselves, which can backfire and maybe even lead to, I think I'm just going to drink more then. Screw it. Certainly that was the case for me. But it was really just focusing on the kids and developing that relationship and finding so much beauty and magic and joy, and just never even, the only time I ever think about drinking is like playing what if scenarios. Like recently I went to New York alone on like a quick business trip. And, I've been to New York before as a drinker, and there's no greater place on earth to just get plastered. It's acceptable everywhere. And I was like looking around, and I was walking by, I think 54th or 52nd, but by the 21 Club, which I had been to a few times and, martinied up all day long. And I was walking by and just going, I am so glad that I'm not in there right now. my God, there was no, oh, I missed that. And then I, went on a jog around the park and you start realizing it's like, this is kind of what normal people do, you know? You watch episodes of Seinfeld and, they weren't getting drunk every day. Kramer wasn't the wino. I know it's TV, but, it just started kind of showing me like the way I thought life was supposed to be and rewarded, it's wrong for me. And it's good for me to always look at those moments and recognize and I guess what do you compare, like what would the old me be doing now compared to this version of me? And it's kind of fun, plane travel. Oh my God. Anyway.
Yeah, actually arriving to your destination and like feeling clear-headed, like you don't need a nap.
Yeah, or to be escorted off the plane and met by the local authorities. Now, not that has ever happened, but I mean, it could have if I didn't, sweet talk my way out of it. But yeah, it's just you just get to a point where, and I think the other challenge is when you have all this, not only the time back, as you said, if you just start drinking at 5, even if it's 2 glasses, you've kind of veered off course or changed direction, and you really can't do anything that's going to lead to something meaningful if that's what you're trying to do. And so when you get all this time back, it's a struggle to fill that time. And so you really have to almost pretend you're a child again and go outside and start planting stuff. And,
yeah,
it's, and it could be the thing that sends a lot of people running back to the bar, but it also can be something that is very exciting, if not a little isolating, but I just don't know how else to do it. So,
yeah, I have like 9 things I want to touch on from what you just said, because there's so much good in there. And the first thing is with friends, I was in such a unique position, and I really wonder if this happened because I was visualizing so much. So this was a time in my life, like I had started Mind Love and I was still drinking in what most of my friends would consider a very healthy way. But I was doing so much reflecting because I would write like gratitude in the morning and the evening. And it was like the way that I was actually launching my goals. And I kept visualizing who I wanted to be. And a lot of that visualization and writing down all of the specifics and doing all of the mindfulness techniques, I wonder if this is the reason why most of my drinking friends fell away before I stopped drinking. And so there were like 2 friends that I had had for a long time that were kind of turning toxic. I finally let those go. For some reason, all the new friends I was making didn't drink. And at this point in my life, I was like, man, I just wish I had somebody to go have a wine night with. Like, this is the one reason I missed this past friend. And so I ended up in a position where most of my friends did not drink. And then I moved. And so I didn't have to deal with like, oh, all my friends are going out drinking. Yeah, of course I had a couple, but they weren't huge drinkers like I was and my friends were before. And so it was like I did this circle shift beforehand. But I really do attribute it to maybe the reason that I was making these subconscious and sometimes conscious decisions was because I got really specific on the person I wanted to be and what my days looked like. And I wasn't including alcohol in my high vibrational like meditation journaling sessions, And so that was one thing. And then the next thing, what finally got me though, was I obviously didn't drink while I was pregnant. I had a few glasses of wine here and there. But then when I had my son, I remember feeling like, wow, I feel like my relationship with alcohol is naturally solved. I don't crave it right now because it had been so long since I had been drinking regularly. And mind you, before I got pregnant, I was already, I think 60 days sober. Like I had given up drinking to try to do 100 days. And then I got pregnant. And then for some reason, the goal didn't feel fun anymore because I was like, no one's going to credit this. It's all about the baby now. Yeah. So then I kind of slowly would have like a half of a drink here and there. And I was like, wow, how nice it is to be unchained from this. And then one day I woke up and realized, what a slippery slope. That took like a month and a half, but I am back to wanting a glass of wine every single night. And I'm not being quite as present because I have this glass of wine on this tiny little table and I'm making sure my kid doesn't knock it over, and I'm wanting to sit there with the glass of wine and not be on the floor and playing with him. And it's easier to like turn on a show. And I was just like, no. And so it was his 6-month birthday. That was like, I'm not drinking today and I'm never drinking again. And that was kind of my cutoff point. But now I look at it, and that same realization you have when you're like jogging in the morning, my morning routine is my favorite time of the day. I wake up at 5 right now and like do a little yoga and meditate and journal, and I light candles. I make it this whole sensory experience. And I go to bed very early in order to like wake up and feel good about this. And so I know I wouldn't be able to go to bed that early if I was having a glass of wine, because I'd want one more, and then the show wouldn't be over, so I'd have one more. But then my my glass of wine would be done, but the show's not over. Like it was like this vicious cycle. And
maybe I'll have one more glass just till the show's over.
Yes.
It really is when you are doing, or we're doing things that were very intentional. And in my mind, even in my 20s, and I kind of grew up in Southern California, so I've always had I know what healthy looks like. And for some reason, it's like a vegan yoga master. That's who is somewhere deep inside of me. But
no, I just gave up veganism because it ruined my gut. So just drop that adjective.
Trust me. I'm not either of those things. But in my mind, I'm like, that's, but in Texas, for the longest time, I'm chewing tobacco and drinking Jim Beam and smoking cigarettes and just the polar opposite of what I know is health. And again, that I think those things just start grinding away at your own belief to do anything. And so, to the point where if you got up and wrote down goals, like I'm going to run 5 miles today or blah, 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 you're like, I probably won't do that because, I just drank 12 beers last night and I'm hungover. And so what's the point of even setting goals? And, that's the shame spiral effect. And I can go, or used to go really deep into that. And I think there was a part of me that was using alcohol as an excuse as to why I wasn't like a brain surgeon or, a senator. It's like not going out and telling anybody, oh, I would have been a senator if I didn't drink. But I've always had such bigger ideas for myself. And, even when I moved out to LA to write screenplays, I was drinking like crazy out there. And I think that subconsciously what I was really doing is, okay, yeah, I wrote for 2 hours a day. Good job. And then, you'd see things like Good Will Hunting come out and win an Oscar. And these guys, in my mind, I'm like, I know I could do that, but I'm also drinking, having fun, and doing all this other stuff. But it wasn't like writing for 12 hours a day and then like camping out at CAA to stalk agents. I mean because that's what it takes. And I wasn't willing to give up my fun times. So it was like me having this justification of myself as to why I wasn't winning an Oscar. That's when alcohol is like ruling every part of your life, when you're kind of using it as a chess piece or something to prove why things that you really want to happen aren't happening.
Yeah, I had this illusionary belief that, all the creatives drank. And so I could drink a little bit while I was writing some things, or I could drink a little bit while I came with ideas and brainstormed. And it always seemed like it was going to be like this high vibe. If I had a really thin-stemmed wine glass, it would be sophisticated and like good for me. But instead, the conclusion I came to is I really do believe that the energy that you create something in will be the energy that it spreads. And so even if you read something by like Hunter S. Thompson, I'm not feeling uplifted by the end. I'm entertained, but that's very similar to what the alcohol does. I'm entertained, but it's kind of a dense energy. And that might be the woo-woo side of me talking. But one thing that I kind of go between now because I know exactly what you mean about the using it as an excuse of, okay, well, what can I really accomplish? And I think for me, when I first gave up drinking, I was like, okay, well, I got to be super productive. And it ended up being this, I wasn't there yet. Like I needed some sort of step into it. And so I ended up binging too much TV at night instead and just making a crap ton of tea or like mocktails. And so my habits were kind of the same, but I was at least getting rid of the addictive tendency. And it took me quite a while until I could really use up that time with something more high vibrational. And I had to go back to the original practices that helped me launch my business. And it was like, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? And where I'm at right now is, yes, I'm in another productivity streak because I feel like I need to get stuff done before I have this next baby. And also, I know, like now I'm almost 40. Like I'm not at the beginning of my adulthood where I'm like, well, I have all this time in the world. It's like, yes, there's things I still want to accomplish that I don't want to take to my grave, as you call it in your book. And also, I want to enjoy my life in the process. And so I downloaded a ukulele learning app and a friend let me borrow a ukulele and I'm playing the ukulele at night and playing the piano again and I'm journaling and I'm like going back to all of my original like vision boarding stuff. And so I'm trying to make it fun rather than just like, okay, well now this thing's not there. I've got to just go hard and you know, be productive and fill the time with all of these work-related things. And so I do think it's important to fill some of that time, at least for my journey, to really enjoy that space that I've created.
I think that is so important. That might be like the headline of the show is, you know, I think that, and I'm not speaking for anybody else but myself, but I'm sure it's common, is that when you quit, whether it's alcohol or burning down houses or whatever you're doing that's holding you back, we're conditioned to feel like we have to really do something now. Whether, you know, especially because it's so easy, the golden age of creators, you know, it's like, I'll start a show on YouTube, I'll do all this stuff. You know, it's okay to just not do anything except feel how you feel and start figuring out what you really like to do. And sometimes, you know, that's going to be binge watching, you know, the first season of Breaking Bad. Sometimes it's going to be coming up with an idea for a new business. But I think that if you start forcing greatness upon yourself, especially right away, because we all, you know, if you stop drinking, you have like 3 months of like this manic energy, like, oh my God, you know, it's like you've been asleep for 20 years. And then you realize, oh, wow, I haven't done anything. And then there's a part of me, at least, it was like, well, then I might as well just go back to my cave and drink. But I think there's a real flow to life, and it's not always a creative energy or a positive energy, but you're able to kind of identify it through a clear lens of sobriety and slowly start rebuilding your life. My favorite things to do right now, I love night gardening. A little headlamp on, and you can really see the plants and clip what you're supposed to clip, and it's not 100 degrees out. People think I'm crazy. And also, recently in New York, my daughter and I and wife were walking through the Color Museum, and there's this room where you put on headphones, and it's like a silent disco. And so we're sitting there and, you know, doing our thing for like 5 minutes, and we left, and I go, you know, I feel so energized. I feel so great. I mean, I like dancing. And you know, silent disco right now is like a very big part of my life. And it's so funny because it's so embarrassing. Like my daughter, she buys in, but my two sons, I mean, God forbid they even knew. And my wife still kind of, you know, gives me a weird look. So sometimes it's like, you know, 11:30 at night, and I'm like, oh, I haven't gotten my 20 minutes of disco in. I got to put up my headphones. And I'm like sometimes worried that somebody's like looking in the window of our house or something. And it's challenging to just be the truest version of yourself because, I don't know, a lot of people are going to reject that, and nobody likes to be rejected. I don't care who you are. We're all sensitive at some point. And, you know, maybe I need to start like a silent disco club, but I've gotten to the point where I just enjoy the benefits of it. I don't care if anybody really sees. Not that I go to the gym and start doing it, but it makes me feel good. And, you know, the scientist part of me is like, it burns just as many calories as jogging. I can tell by my watch, and it's getting me limber. which will help my golf game. And, the ultimate goal is for me to be doing the backspin at my daughter's wedding. So it lines up that way as well. And I just don't feel the need to like post on social, like the benefits of silent disco. I love that there's so many people that are helpful just around the sobriety thing, but it's almost like it's become kind of, I don't know. I don't like the word toxic, but it's like, does anybody really know? Certainly some people are going to have like a nice little saying and look at me, I'm glowing. But, we all know that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes in everybody's life. And I think that was something that this is important, that, trust is the ultimate commodity. And that's what I tried to give in my book. It's not a how to quit drinking. It's not look at me, I'm Tucker Max, I'm crazy. It's more of just a guy who's been humbled, going through a pretty cool little life that was, peaks and valleys, and the role of alcohol started playing a bigger and bigger role. And I have a feeling that's the same kind of hero's journey that everybody is on, if alcohol happens to be the one co-star.
Yeah, I will say that I've only posted a couple things about, like, I did my 100 days or whatever, and I actually posted a slideshow of, there's this trend going on Instagram where it's got like the Teenage Dirtbag song, and it's like, shows you now, and then all of a sudden it's like all of your crap photos. And I have so many party photos because I was just such a party girl, and people were like, oh my gosh, you talked about being a party girl on your show, and I could not visualize it until now. These photos are hilarious. But I get so many people that reach out about the alcohol stuff, because so many more people than we actually observe have a complicated relationship with it. They might still be ordering and whatever, but there's a small voice in a lot of people's minds that, like, maybe this isn't good for me, or how long am I going to keep doing this, or whatever it is. And I am, for some reason, blessed with a personality where I just don't get embarrassed about most things. Like, I don't care what people see anymore. I think it's because I held shame for a really long time, and now I refuse to hold any of it. But with stuff like the silent disco stuff, or just being crazy, like, one of the biggest benefits I see to that is when I'm out there doing something insane just because it feels good, it can look like from the outside a bunch of people around me giving me a side eye, like, what the hell is she doing? But you give people permission to live into their own authenticity, because so many of them are thinking like, gosh, I wish I could just, she looks stupid out there, but I wish I had the balls to go look stupid with this other thing that means a lot to me, or this that I don't do in public, or this way that I hold myself back. And so I love that you do the silent discos and don't care, because especially for your kids, even though at this age they might be like, that is so lame, Dad, one day that little trait is going to rub off on them. And so thank you so much for sharing such an in-depth look into your story and how you got here. So for listeners that are interested in finding your book, where's the best place to connect with you and find that?
I spend all day on Instagram. That's kind of where I have posting content. And I'm certainly, I want to be clear, I'm not taking away. I content up. I think, like I said, the golden age of creators. I just think when it's something very delicate, it seems trivialized in a way. And that's where I put stuff about the book or thoughts, and not yet videos of me doing silent disco. Could be coming soon. But that's the best place. The book is on Amazon, of course. It's in a few select independent bookstores in and around Texas and Colorado. But, Amazon's the best. I miss the days of Barnes and Noble and going in there and nosing through books. I spent many a good hour inside a Barnes and Noble, but they don't exist anymore. There's like 3, I think. And so I think my mom's the only one that's like, well, when can I find it at Barnes and Noble? And I'm like, Mom, you literally can get it tomorrow by ordering on Amazon. So that's where the best place to find a book.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/252. Your challenge for this week is to reflect on your relationship with alcohol. This is a really passionate topic of mine because, 1, it's so recent. 2, it took up so much of my life. 3, it was one of the hugest mindset shifts that I've ever had. I explained in the beginning how tied to alcohol I was, how much it was tied to fun and socializing and Sunday afternoon even, or after work relaxation, or doing a puzzle, or watching a show. Geez, it's funny how when you reflect back, when you can actually be honest with yourself because you're not trying to hide anymore, how the habits really come to light, how the real effects are hard to ignore. I made excuses for it for years, as I said, and I still could. And it seems like often when I tell people about giving up alcohol, they like to respond with their own defenses of it, which is just funny because you would never really do that if somebody came up to you and said, yeah, I finally realized I had to give up Coke. It was negatively affecting my life. You wouldn't really hear somebody say, yeah, but the thing about Coke is just so good for open and honest conversation, and you just don't really get tired on it, so you can keep drinking. And but when you tell people about giving up alcohol, so often, it's like you can hear the inside of their mind. And you know it's all of their excuses. And I'm not saying all of those people have a problem, but I will say that my first thought when people do come to the defenses of alcohol immediately after me telling them I'm giving it up or I gave it up, I wonder if they're questioning it themselves. Otherwise, why would these excuses be so top of mind? The people I know with really healthy relationships with alcohol, you know, the kind that will have a drink once a week or once a month. When I mention to them that I'm giving up alcohol, most often the response is something like, good for you, that's amazing. So just something to think about. Consider your responses when people share. Also consider that people who have recently given up something don't really want to hear all of the reasons why they should bring it back. Just a little pro tip. But I'd love to hear if this is something that you struggle with, what you're going through, if you need a little assistance. I can also share some of my best tips for that first month, which is the hardest. So reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa. If you found this episode helpful or you know someone who would find it helpful, please consider sharing it. You can share it directly with them by the share button in the top right-hand corner, or you can take a screenshot and share it on Instagram and tag mindlovemelissa and mindlove podcast. If you'd like to support MindLove, the best way to do that is by joining MindLove Premium at mindlove.com/premium, where you get a whole backlog of exclusive episodes that will only be available for you if you do join Premium, plus an ad-free listening experience and early release episodes and bonus meditations. Another amazing way to support that's super free is by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, which I absolutely love. And finally, you can support one of my amazing sponsors, and they're all listed at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with MindLove. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.